Hey, so I am about to repot these little succulents into these awesome mugs. Now, as mentioned, I am going to show you two ways in which I think you could successfully grow these succulents in containers without holes. I always advise against doing this, and to be honest, this will kind of be a risk too. You have to be very careful when it comes to the amount of water you put in these containers, because with succulents, not wetting them for like 2 or 3 weeks, they'll survive. But if you wet them back to back, like every 4 days, maybe even every week in a container like this, chances are they will die. So less is oftentimes more. It's easier for a succulent to bounce back from being extremely dry than it is to recover from root rot or just overly saturated soil, because there really isn't much you could do to dry the soil out after it's been in there, apart from taking the plant out completely. So number one, who goes where? All right, so one of the ways I would do this is by putting the succulent in a separate container. It is slightly bigger than the container it came in, which is always a good idea. And the reason people always suggest you pot a plant in a container that is not much bigger than the original container is because, you see, this is very tiny. So this can only hold a tiny amount of water. But if you put it in a massive container, then you feel the need to, wet all of the soil, and that's a lot of soil. So it's a lot of water for a tiny plant. So even though that container may have holes at the bottom, because there's more soil, there's just more volume, there's more water, so the plant could potentially still die from root rot. So a smaller container is always better. Even if you want to put it in a nice fancy pot like what I'll be showing you, there are ways to get away with a smaller container in a massive pot, and I'll show you that now. For starters, let's take him out of here. He has a really good low root system, definitely ready for repotting, but he is very wet. Just gonna take off these dried bits, any little dead arms that he's got. Makes no sense repotting him with those. So that's those two. And because he's so wet, I don't think I'll be adding any water to his mix. Now I can just get some soil. Now this is a Cactus Smith that I use. It's very light, fast draining. It's basically just peat moss, perlite, and compost. There's no soil in this at all, which is okay when it comes to succulents. I usually get this from Muddy Boots. It's their peat moss, perlite, and compost mix. Just ask for it. Usually $15 for a bag, a massive bag. So yeah, I'm gonna get a little bit of this in here, and this is the size container I'm going to be using. This fits in here perfectly, but not over the edge, so this will be easy to hide. I'm gonna get the soil in here. Ooh. Get my boy to get around here, and I am going to pot him a little high. Right. Any big pieces I'll be taking out. There we go. So because his soil was so saturated with water already. I won't be wetting this per se, but what I will do is just give the top of it a nice spritz to help keep the dust down, you know, just to keep the soil down. But not too much, because he's already had a bit of a dousing. So make sure he is nice and even in there. That's what I do to hide the fact that he's in this container. Put it in here. Make sure it's centered. And she has graciously provided this container of pebbles. So what I'll do is start to fill these in. All around the sides and the top. Now, in my opinion, this is the better of the two ways to do it. Well, the safer of the two ways to do this. Take those big ones out. All right, let's make sure everybody is good and set. Add these big boys back in here. With the rocks at the top. Looks pretty cute. And of course, you won't be overwatering this. Just maybe once a week, once every other week, probably. And because he's in that small container of soil, yeah, there isn't much chance of oversaturation. So here he is. Focus. Very cute. So that's one. The second way I would do this is by laying a solid foundation with gravel. Put a good bit of gravel at the bottom before I add the peat moss and perlite. So it's not as much soil. And by putting the gravel at the bottom, it'll kind of stand to be like a water reserve, like a reservoir, so that the soil isn't directly at the bottom of the container, and so the plant doesn't, actually I'll put two of these in there, and the plant isn't sitting directly in water. Hopefully, if she follows the instructions and doesn't overwater these, then there won't be much of a reservoir of water at the bottom. so there won't be much of a reservoir of water at the bottom. I mean, some of it will make its way down there, but if you don't wet this in like a week or two, then the plant will pull that water up from the gravel into the roots, and that'll help feed it over time, as long as the water isn't high above the gravel and sitting in the soil and drowning the plant. All right, so we've got these two in here. Now, because I've used these two in here, I am going to put one of my succulents into the third one. But she's got these awesome stones. Before I put those in though, just gonna give this a little spritz. Keep this soil down. Set these roots in place. All right. Seems good enough. All right, so this is it with these two in here. Very cute. Now I'll add a few of these stones for aesthetic reasons. Can you fit? There you go. It's kind of like playing Tetris. Just gotta fit them in however you can. He should be perfect right here. There we go. Give it a little rinse. Where did you come from? Now, that's how he looks. As I said, this is two ways in which you could pot succulents into containers without holes. With both of these methods, you still need to be very careful with how much water you put into each of them. I'd suggest wetting it every 2 weeks, but that's just me.